Does the Prime Minister of Japan live in a haunted house? That seems like a kind of ridiculous question, but it's something that the Japanese media has talked about on numerous occasions, as have Japanese politicians. It's even something that's gone on the official record of Japan's parliament. So, I'm going to make a video about it. Hello, I'm Jeffrey Hall, and welcome to Japan Matters, a channel in which we discuss various matters related to Japan. I've lived in Japan for about 20 years now, and over that time, I've come to see that there are a lot of people in this country who care about the spiritual, who care about the world outside of what we can see. Japan generally has a reputation as a country that is high tech and is not very religious, but this country is full of shrines and temples, and millions of people go to these places, especially right now as I'm recording this around the new year. There will be millions of Japanese who go and pray for good luck in the coming year at their local shrine. People will buy amulets that are meant to protect their health, but also protect them from evil spirits. Now, I'm not saying that Japan is especially superstitious or anything like that, or anti science. There are a lot of people in other countries who have views about this, who believe in ghosts and other kinds of supernatural things. But in my time in Japan, I have met plenty of people who seriously believe in ghosts, who believe in vengeful spirits, and take measures to protect themselves against these supernatural forces. There's also a big market in Japan for fortune-telling books and products related to spirituality. This country has a long history of incredibly interesting popular culture related to the supernatural as well. You can go back hundreds of years, and there are amazing stories about vengeful spirits and ghosts that are existing throughout Japan. And many of the shrines across Japan are dedicated to pacifying vengeful spirits. It's no coincidence that ghosts, curses, spirits, yokai, and other supernatural creatures are characters and topics in many of Japan's most popular films, video games, comics, and anime. If you watch a show like Dan and you see that characters are going to check out some kind of tunnel that is famous to be haunted, well, that's because this kind of work of popular culture is based on actual places that exist in Japan. There are many locations in Japan that are infamous as haunted spots where one can go and have a relatively high chance of seeing a ghost related to some kind of tragic event that took place in that location. Here we can see a photo of the Prime Minister's residence when it was first completed in 1929. It has a rather neat Art Deco style, similar to the Imperial Hotel that had been recently completed in the city. But when this building was completed, Japan was entering one of the most chaotic times in its political history. This was a period when radical elements of Japan's military wanted to take politics into their own hands. In order to bring about political change in their country, these radical young members of the military used acts of terror and violence and assassination. And the Prime Minister's residence became the setting of several of these incidents. The first such incident occurred in 1932 when a group of young naval officers stormed into the Prime Minister's residence hoping to carry out a coup d'etat. Then Prime Minister Inukai Tsuyoshi was present in the residence at the time, and he offered to talk to the young officers about their grievances. However, they infamously said that there was no need for dialogue, and they shot him to death on the spot. The coup d'etat was ultimately unsuccessful and came to be known as the May 15th incident. The second violent killing that took place in the prime minister's residence took place a few years later on February 26th, 1936. Once again, radical elements of the military were attempting a coup d'etat. In this case, young army officers took a unit of troops to the prime minister's residence with the aim of killing then Prime Minister Okada. They ended up killing 4 police officers who were trying to defend the residence, and they murdered someone who they believed to be the prime minister. However, in reality, their victim was Okada's brother-in-law, Colonel Matsuo Denzo, who kind of looked like Okada, as you can see from this photo, but was not the prime minister. The members of this attempted coup did successfully kill several other leading figures in the government before their coup attempt ultimately failed. These 2 deadly incidents gave the prime minister's residence a dark reputation. Some of you may know that apartments and houses in Japan where people have died or crimes have taken place are extremely undesirable locations, and it's often hard to find people who want to live there. However, this was the official residence of Japan's prime ministers, and as long as it remained at this location, every subsequent prime minister had to live in some of the same rooms where people had been violently murdered in the past. And this helped to build this reputation of it being a spooky and scary place, perhaps a place where one might encounter vengeful spirits or ghosts. There are also recorded accounts of people who saw ghosts or sensed the presence of ghosts on the grounds of the official residence. One of them was Hara Yasuko, the first lady of a prime minister who served for 64 days in 1994. And she later wrote a book, this book that's on the screen next to me, about her experiences. And Mrs. Hata has become one of the major sources for the idea that there are ghosts on the grounds of the prime minister's residence. And whenever there is a media report about this, they tend to quote her book. So let me share what she said in this book about the ghosts. First Lady Hata wrote the following about her first day taking a tour of the residence. I felt a chill, as if something oppressive was weighing on my chest, a strange and ominous atmosphere. So she seemed to sense some kind of ghostly presence. She also claimed that the previous prime minister's wife chose not to live in the house with her children because of these ghost rumors, and that the former prime minister burned incense in the house, and that when she first came into the house, she could smell that incense, and it really spooked her out. When moving in, Hata called on one of her friends, some kind of spiritual expert or spiritual advisor, to help purify the grounds of the residence. And this person claimed that the residence was crawling with spirits, crawling with them. They were all over the place, and especially in one closet of the residence where this spiritual expert claimed that she could feel a pulling power coming from this closet. Hata also wrote that her son, who lived in the residence with her and the prime minister, would sprinkle salt around the house every morning before going to work. If you are somewhat aware of Japanese culture, you may be familiar with how salt is used for spiritual purification. If you've watched a sumo match, that's why sumo wrestlers throw around salt before their matches. Well, it's also used by people who want to protect their houses from evil spirits. And in this case, Miss Hata's son seemed to think that throwing some salt around would protect them from some bad ghosts. In this case, the ghosts in question were believed to be the spirits of Imperial Japanese Army soldiers, perhaps some of them who participated in one of the 2 attempted coups d'etats of the 1930s, and First Lady Hata's spiritually sensitive friend claimed that she sensed the presence of such a soldier in the residence's garden area. Several years after the publication of Hata's book, which spread the idea of ghosts at the Prime Minister's office across Japan, another person reported a ghostly encounter at the residence. And this time it was a Prime Minister, Prime Minister Mori Yoshiro. According to a story that was told by Mori to another politician who then posted it online, one day Mori was in his bedroom and he heard the sound of military boots heading down the hallway towards his door. And obviously, people don't wear military boots inside the Prime Minister's residence, so this would have been a very strange thing to hear. But the sound of boots stopped abruptly before Mori's door, and he called out, asking who it was. He went over, he opened the door, and there was no one there. He then asked his staff about it, and his staff reported that there had been no people in that part of the building at that time of the day. So, apparently, Mori was a believer that this was ghosts, and he warned other politicians about it. Mori's popular successor, Koizumi Junichiro, was also asked about the ghost issue, and he kind of laughed it off. He said he didn't believe in ghosts, but he reportedly had a Shinto priest come to the residence and carry out a purification ritual. Does this mean that it was an exorcism, as some people might translate it? Maybe or maybe not. I mean, after all, Shinto priests bless election cars before elections. They bless restaurants when restaurants open. It doesn't necessarily mean that Koizumi was terrified by ghosts of Japan's imperial past and was trying to carry out an exorcism here. The old Prime Minister's residence underwent renovations between 2002 and 2005. This photo behind me is what it looks like today. This is, in many ways, a different building in the inside, but the ghost stories persist. One source of the continued ghost stories was yet another prime minister. This time it was Aso Taro, who served as prime minister in 2009. One night he claimed he heard spooky noises in his bedroom, and instead of acting like a scared little boy, he decided to be manly and announce his presence to the ghosts, saying, "Hello, I am the Prime Minister of Japan, Mr. Aso." So this was a story he told to the media, probably to make him sound pretty cool. Later that year, Aso suffered a crushing defeat in the election, and his party was driven out of power and replaced with an opposition government. And the new First Lady, Mrs. Hatoyama, was a believer in ghosts and allegedly saw some of these ghosts on the grounds of the Prime Minister's residence. The ghost stories reached a new level of importance after Abe Shinzo returned as Prime Minister in 2012 and decided not to move into the official residence while he was Prime Minister. It's said that he was comfortable living in his very nice residence in Tokyo, but nonetheless, rumors swelled that there must be some other reason why he didn't want to spend the night in the Prime Minister's residence. And so one opposition politician, an upper house lawmaker named Kagaya Ken, decided to officially submit questions to the government regarding the Prime Minister's decision not to live in his official residency. Several of Kagaya's questions hinted at the belief that it was a waste of taxpayer money for a newly renovated building to be maintained without anyone actually using it. But he also asked a question about the ghosts. Here is the official question as it was submitted during the 183rd session of the Diet in May 2013. This is on the website of the House of Councilors, the upper house of Japan's National Diet, and you can scroll down and see the various questions that were submitted by this politician to the government regarding the cost of the residence that the prime minister wasn't using and other things. But when you get to point number 7, you can see that he has a question about the ghosts. He is asking if Prime Minister Abe was aware of ghosts from the February 26th incident and other incidents appearing at the residence. And he's asking if this is the reason why Abe doesn't want to live in this house. This is the equivalent of a US senator asking President Biden if he spends too much time at his beach house because he's afraid of the White House ghosts, or asking President Trump if he's golfing so much outside of the White House because he thinks there's ghosts in his bedroom. And this was actually submitted officially by a member of the main opposition party to the government of Japan, and they were required to give an answer to this question. We can see the official response to this question on the Wikipedia entry for Mr. Kagaya. He was a one-term member of the upper house. He didn't have a very long career in national politics, so he doesn't have a lot in this entry, but it does have this section which is about an episode in his career. And that one episode that is worthy of being included in Wikipedia is the question he asked the government about the ghosts. And the government's response was, we're not aware of the matter that you're asking us about. That seems a bit dishonest. The rumors at this point were so famous that probably everybody around the Prime Minister's office knew about these rumors, but the answer was clearly meant to highlight the ridiculousness of a question about ghosts. Really? Are you really going to ask the government this? Both Prime Minister Abe and his successor, Mr. Suga, did not live in the official residence, preferring to commute from their other homes in Tokyo. And this left the residence open for quite a few years, and it only fueled speculation about the ghosts. I'm sure that they both preferred the living arrangements that they'd been comfortable with for years already to the stuffiness of this prime minister's residence, but nonetheless, people are going to talk, and people love a good ghost story. However, the next prime minister, Mr. Kishida, lived in the residence during his term in office, and there were no reports of any ghostly encounters during this time. So that brings us to the events of the last week, which prompted me to make this video about a silly topic like ghosts in the Prime Minister's residence. Japan's newest Prime Minister, Mr. Ishiba, is now officially moving into the residence, and the media asked him about the ghost rumors. Ishiba replied by saying that he'd grown up as a fan of a manga series about a friendly ghost, so he wasn't particularly scared, although if he did see a real ghost, he might be scared. The manga series that he's talking about is called Obake no Kyutaro. It was popular in the 1960s when Ishiba was a kid. It's very, very well known in Japan, but almost nobody knows it outside of Japan, so most of the international news stories about this ghost question left out Obake no Kyutaro because the cultural reference just wouldn't translate. But you can kind of say this is sort of like a Japanese Casper the Ghost. But as you can see from this character, He does not look like a scary Imperial Japanese soldier who would come to the Prime Minister's office to murder the Prime Minister. So there's a bit of a gap in this kind of friendly ghost and the ghost that people talk about in these rumors about the hauntings within the Prime Minister's residence. And that's where we stand today. Don't expect this ghost story to go away anytime soon. As long as the Prime Minister's residence remains in this site, people are going to talk about the ghost stories. People in Japan love a good ghost story. The international media loves a good ghost story. So every time a new Prime Minister gets elected in Japan, expect he or she to be asked about the ghosts. And hopefully, we'll have some future ghost sightings to talk about as well. And if that does happen, I'll make another video about it. Okay, I'll wrap up the video there. If you liked this video, please consider subscribing to this channel and also, of course, like the video itself. And I would really appreciate it if you were to join my Patreon page. Your support will help motivate me to keep creating more videos like this. And also, I appreciate any feedback in the comment section. I've been experimenting a lot with types of videos, styles of videos. I'm totally an amateur at this, and I'm learning new techniques with every video, some which might work, some which might not work. But anyway, please leave a comment, and also maybe share any ghost stories you have about politics in your own countries. Anyway, thanks for listening and have a great day, everyone.